Hello, welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Felicity's surprise. Chapter 3, Tidings of Comfort and Joy. The next morning, Mrs. Merriman said, "Felicity, come along with me. I'm going to the apothecary to get medicine for my cough. We can stop by the milliner on the way home. Perhaps we can find some trim or lace to spruce up your brown silk gown for the dance lesson at the palace. Would you fancy that?" "Yes, Mother," said Felicity. She tried to sound pleased, but she was thinking, even with the new trim, I'd still look like a brown little field mouse. Felicity trailed along with her mother from shop to shop. She was thinking so hard about asking for a new gown, she only heard half the apothecary and her mother chatting. "Mrs. Merriman," said Mr. Galt, the apothecary, "I'm concerned about your cough. It should not linger for a week as it has. I shall give you garlic service and some licorice lozenges, but you must rest." "Thank you, Mr. Galt," said Mrs. Merriman. "I'll have plenty of time to rest after Christmas. 'Tis such a happy, busy time now." Mr. Galt shook his head. "I fear a cough will turn into something more serious if you do not take care," he said. "Mind you, wrap it up well. 'Tis frightfully cold." "Aye," said Mrs. Merriman, "the cold cuts straight to me bones." She coughed as she turned to go. "Come along, Felicity," she said. "Good day, Mr. Galt. I wish you the joy of the season." Felicity and her mother hurried to the milliner's shop. Usually Felicity was not very interested in the pretty shop full of finery for ladies and gentlemen. Never before had Felicity paid attention to the feathers and fans, the feathery bonnets, fancy shoes, purses, laces, and trims. But today Felicity studied the shelves. "Perhaps there is something here that could make my own brown gown beautiful," she thought. "Perhaps there is something magic here." And then Felicity saw the doll. The doll was standing on the shelf, holding a bouquet of tiny silk flowers. She had black painted hair and rosy pink cheeks and an excited expression. "Look at me," she seemed to say. Felicity stared. The doll's gown was made of blue silk. It was the bluest blue there ever was, bluer than the sky, bluer than the sea, a blue so bright it lit up the shop. The neck and sleeves of the gown were trimmed with frill of lace as white and delicate as snowflakes. It was the most beautiful gown Felicity had ever seen. "Oh, if only I could go into a house in a gown like that," thought Felicity. She was so lost in her daydream, she was surprised when she felt her mother's hand on her shoulder. Mother stared at the beautiful doll. She was caught by the doll's magic, too. "Isn't her gown perfect?" sighed Felicity. "Aye," said Mrs. Merriman. "You surprised me, Felicity. I've never known you to care about gowns and such before." "Well, I've never been to the palace before," Felicity burst out. "I've never needed a beautiful gown before." "Aye," said Mrs. Merriman. "I understand." The milliner took the doll out of the case and handed it to Felicity with a smile. "I'm quite proud of that gown," she said. "I made it for the doll myself. I copied the pattern from one I saw Lady Dunmore wearing at church. It is the very latest style from England." She held the doll's gown up to Felicity's cheek. "That blue would look lovely with Felicity's pretty red hair, Mrs. Merriman." "Yes, indeed it would," said Mother. "But—" "I've the bolt of blue silk right here," said the milliner. "And I have made a lady-sized pattern for the gown. It would take only a bit of adjusting to make the pattern fit for Felicity." Felicity looked at her mother with a face full of longing. Suddenly Mrs. Merriman smiled. "You shall have that beautiful gown, Lissy, my dear," she said. "I shall make it for myself." "Oh, thank you, Mother," Felicity exclaimed. "Thank you." She smiled at her mother and hugged the doll. "Your father will say I'm foolish," laughed Mother. "But after all, it is Christmas, and it's the first gown you've ever wanted. Besides, how many times is a young lady invited to the governor's palace? We shall show everyone in Williamsburg how proud we are of our Lissy. We look as fashionable as Lady Dunmore herself." Quickly, the milliner wrapped the blue silk in a tiny parcel. "I know you're a fine needlewoman, Mrs. Merriman," she said, "but if you may have any trouble, do ask me for help. The finished work may be a bit hard." Mrs. Merriman looked worried. "Oh dear," she said. She tried to stifle a cough with her handkerchief. "I'll help you, Mother," Felicity burst out. "At least I'll try." Mrs. Merriman handed Felicity the parcel. "We'll both try," she said, "and the gown will be lovely. Just wait and see." Felicity was so full of happiness she had no room for words. She held the precious parcel close to her chest and smiled at her mother. I'm going to have the most wonderful gown in the world, she thought, because I have the most wonderful mother in the world. That very evening, Mrs. Merriman set to work making Felicity's gown. Felicity watched, finding her bottom lip with concern as her mother cut the slippery blue silk into pieces. The pieces are such odd shapes, Mother, Felicity said nervously. Will they ever come together to make a gown? I do indeed hope so, Mrs. Merriman smiled, but she looked a little nervous. It seemed like a miracle when she pinned the pieces together, and Felicity could see sleeves, a waist, and necktie taking shape. Next morning, Mrs. Merriman began sewing the pieces together. Felicity was very eager to help. She threaded the needle for her mother and handed her pins as she needed them. She and Nan stood behind Mother's chair watching her work. After a little while, Mother turned to them. Now, girls, she said, you're making me uncomfortable. Please don't peer over my shoulders and stare at every stitch I make. Then she smiled. Would you rather play with the ark? She asked. Yes, said the girls. Me too, said William. Very well then, said Mother. Felicity, you may bring it down. Felicity stood on a stool to lift the ark down from its high shelf. The ark was a special toy they brought out only at Christmastide. All three children loved to play with the wooden boat and the small painted animals that went inside. Now they sat at Mother's feet, happily lining the animals up in pairs. Every once in a while, Felicity would pop up to check Mother's progress. Mother, she said, must you sew so slowly? Couldn't you make bigger stitches? No one's going to see them. Mrs. Merriman sighed. Felicity, you know what I always tell you. Haste makes waste. If you want the gown to be perfect, you must be patient. Patient? It was always hard for Felicity to be patient. It was especially hard now, with Christmas only 3 days away and the dance lesson at the palace just 13 days after that. But as the next few days went by, Felicity tried very hard to be patient. She stood still for hours while her mother fitted the gown for her. It was quite uncomfortable to stand without moving, but Felicity never complained. And when the fittings were over, she tried to help with the household chores so that her mother could have more time to work on the gown. She played with William. She read with Nan. She helped Rose, the cook. Felicity wanted her mother to have as much time as possible. Because it was the holiday season, friends and visitors came to call every afternoon. In past years, Felicity had joined all holiday gaiety. She had fun passing the Christmas cakes and listening to visitors chatter, but this year, Felicity was always impatient for the guests to leave. It seemed to her that they talked on and wasted time when her mother could have been sewing. Christmas Eve afternoon brought a steady stream of guests. Felicity's heart sank every time she heard another knock on the door, another hearty voice calling out, Merry Christmas! She groaned to herself every time another happy, laughing group settled in for a long visit. When the last guest finally left, Felicity sighed with relief. Now you can work on my gown, she said to her mother. Mrs. Merriman coughed. She looked very tired. Please, Felicity, don't nag me, she said. I have a great deal of work to get ready for tomorrow. Run along now. Felicity did run along. First she went to Elizabeth's house. Then she and Elizabeth went to the milliner's shop to visit the pretty doll and studied every detail of her beautiful gown. Your gown will look like that soon, Elizabeth assured her. I hope so, said Felicity. Mother must still be attached to the sleeve, then do the hem and add the lace and trim. Your gown will be finished in time, said Felicity. Don't worry. The milliner's doll looked as if she hadn't had a worry in the world. She smiled at Felicity with a cheery smile, full of hope and bright expectations. Felicity felt happier when she looked at the doll. As soon as she came home, Felicity ran up to the stairs. Carefully, she lifted the unfinished gown out of the clothes press. She held the waist of the gown to her own waist. The blue silk swished down around her feet. Someone snorted behind her. Felicity turned and saw Ben. That fancy gown, he scoffed. That's all you care about. You've become a selfish, foolish girl. You think of only dancing at the palace and your finery when you think at all. You don't know what's important anymore. If your horse Penny came back now, you'd be too busy daydreaming to care. That's not true, cried Felicity. I think it is, said Ben. He turned on his heels and left. Felicity could not sleep that night. She lay awake thinking about what Ben said. Was she selfish and foolish? She knew she still loved Penny, the horse she had tamed and then had helped run away. Could she love dancing in gowns too? She heard some rustling downstairs. She crept out of her bedstead and saw her mother sitting at the table, working on the blue gown by the light of a single candle. Mother, whispered Felicity, why are you working on the gown now? The fire is dying and shrubly cold down here. Mrs. Merriman coughed a bit and smiled a weary smile. I didn't have time to sew today, she said. I was busy with guests all afternoon. Then I had to finish decorating. Tomorrow is Christmas. Felicity looked around the dark parlor. She could see that her mother had decorated every window pane with cheery spring of holly. The parlor looks beautiful, Mother, said Felicity. She hugged her mother. You make everything beautiful. Mrs. Merriman smiled at Felicity as she folded the blue gown with care. I love the greenery too, she said. It keeps my spirits up and helps me hold on to my hopes of spring. She bent to kiss Felicity's forehead. And now to bed, Lissy. Tomorrow will be a busy day. Christmas Day was full of exciting noises. Cannons roared and guns were fired to mark the special day. People called on merry greetings of the season as Felicity and her family walked to church. Felicity shivered with pleasure when organ music filled the church and everyone's voices soared together as they sang the beautiful songs. Felicity smiled to herself when the minister read the words of the Christmas story. And the angel said unto them, Fear not, for behold, I bring good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. The words seemed to be meant especially for Felicity this Christmas. There, she thought, Father is right. Christmas is not a time for anger. It is a time of great joy for all people. The angel said so. There was certainly great joy back at the Merriman's house when everyone sat down to dinner. Felicity's mother and Rose had prepared a tremendous Christmas feast. Mrs. Merriman sat at the head of the table, serving up steamed bowls of soup and making sure everyone's plate was full of venison, ham, and turkey. She herself cut Ben 3 slices of mince pie. Rest yourself, my dear, said her husband. You've stuffed us all and barely taken a bite out of the fine feast you and Rose made. But Mrs. Merriman just smiled and handed a plate of dates and figs to finish off the glorious meal. Felicity went to bed full of food and full of happiness. She closed the red check curtains around her so the bed so that she would be cozy. She could hear the sweet sound of carolers singing outside her window below. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy, comfort and joy. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy. Felicity decided there had never been a finer Christmas. As she snuggled underneath her counterpane and drifted off to sleep, she thought about the beautiful blue gown. Now that Christmas is over, she said to herself, Mother will have time to finish it. That was a thought of great comfort and great joy. And that's the end of that chapter. See you later.